Hey Skull Nation, are you ready for one of the most shocking twists in recent Minnesota Vikings history? Because what I'm about to break down might completely flip how we see the future of this team, and trust me, nobody saw this coming. We're talking about J.J. McCarthy, that J.J. McCarthy, possibly being traded just 2 years after being drafted in the top 10. Sounds insane, right? But stick with me because the deeper we go, the crazier this situation gets. And here's the big question I want you to think about right now. Are the Vikings making a bold genius move, or are they about to make a massive mistake? Right now, everything starts with one name shaking up the entire quarterback room: Kyler Murray. The Minnesota Vikings didn't just casually look at him as a short-term fix. They reportedly explored something much bigger. We're talking about a potential multi-year vision, not just a one-year Band-Aid. That alone should make every Vikings fan stop and think about what's really going on behind the scenes. Because if the coaching staff sees Murray as a long-term answer, where does that leave McCarthy? According to reports, Kevin O'Connell made it clear that Murray wasn't just another option. He was potentially the guy. The kind of quarterback you build around, grow with, and invest in. And when you hear names like Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and Christian Darrisaw tied into that vision, it paints a very clear picture of what this offense could become. But again, where does that leave the young quarterback you just spent a top 10 pick on? Let's be real for a second, Vikings fans. This kind of situation is rare, but it's not unheard of in the NFL. Teams have moved on from first-round quarterbacks before, and fast. We've seen it with Josh Rosen. We've seen it with Trey Lance. And every time it sends shockwaves across the league. So while it feels crazy, history tells us it's definitely possible. Now here's where things get really interesting: trade scenarios. Multiple potential deals have already been floated, and the range is all over the place. Some teams are offering late-round picks, others are trying to take low-risk swings. And honestly, that tells you a lot about how the league currently values McCarthy. And that value? It might be lower than Vikings fans want to admit. Let's start with the Los Angeles Rams. This one might actually make a lot of sense if you think about it. They're preparing for life after Matthew Stafford, but they're not desperate yet. That gives them flexibility to take a gamble. And McCarthy? He could be that project quarterback they try to develop, just like they did successfully in the past. The proposed deal? A conditional 5th-round pick that could turn into a 4th. Not exactly a blockbuster return, right? But if you're Minnesota, is that really enough for a former top 10 pick? Now let's talk about the Cleveland Browns, a team that has been searching for quarterback stability for what feels like forever. Their situation is messy. Injuries, inconsistency, and uncertainty have defined that position for years. So bringing in a young guy like McCarthy could be seen as a low-risk, high-upside move. But again, the offer? Late-round picks. That's the theme here, Vikings fans. Then we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars. This one is more about development than immediate impact. Trevor Lawrence is the guy there, no debate. So McCarthy wouldn't have the pressure of being the savior. Instead, he could sit, learn, and rebuild his confidence. But once again, we're talking about a 5th-round pick. That's it. What about the New York Jets? Now this is where things get a bit more intriguing. They're thinking long-term, and while they have a bridge quarterback, they know the future isn't locked in. McCarthy could be that developmental piece they invest in quietly. And the offer here? Slightly better, a 4th-round pick with some adjustments. Still not elite value, though. Then there's the Arizona Cardinals scenario, which almost feels poetic in a weird way. A team that once moved on from a young QB for Kyler Murray, now potentially flipping the script. They could bring in McCarthy as a fresh start, a new hope for the future. But again, we're talking about late picks and swaps. Nothing that screams franchise quarterback value. And don't sleep on the Pittsburgh Steelers. This one is sneaky interesting. They love tough, developmental players, and McCarthy could fit that mold if given the right coaching. Plus, he'd instantly become one of the most intriguing players in that QB room. But once more, it's a low-risk, low-cost move. Now let's pause for a second, Vikings fans, because this is where I need your opinion. If you are running the Minnesota Vikings, are you accepting any of these deals? Or are you holding on to McCarthy and betting on his upside? Because here's the reality, trading him now means selling low. Very low. And that's dangerous. It sets a precedent that could hurt this franchise long-term. It basically tells the league, we're willing to move on fast and cheap. On the other hand, keeping him creates a potential quarterback controversy. And that's something no team wants lingering in the locker room. So what's the smarter move? Personally, the Rams deal stands out the most, only because it has upside with that conditional pick. A future fourth-rounder in a strong draft class? That has real value. But even then, is it worth giving up on a guy you believed in just 2 years ago? And here's the biggest wild card in all of this, injuries and desperation. All it takes is one team losing their starting QB, and suddenly McCarthy's value could skyrocket. That's why patience might be the best strategy here. Because once the season chaos begins, everything changes. So as it stands right now, Vikings fans, this situation is far from settled. McCarthy being traded is no longer impossible. It's real, it's being discussed, and it could happen. But the return, that's where things get complicated. And the Vikings need to be very careful not to rush into the wrong decision. Because this move could define the next era of Minnesota Vikings football. Now I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Should the Vikings trade J.J. McCarthy or keep developing him? And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with every Vikings fan you know. Skol!